talk to your kid. Don't sit down at the dining room table and say, "I'm going to have a talk."
Youth that do gamble are 6 times more likely to develop an addiction as an adult.
You know, you have this certain mentality, never my kid.
They shouldn't feel isolated for making a healthy choice.
For a safe, healthy, and drug-free community. Watch Step Up to Save Our Children today. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Step Up to Save Our Children. I'm Denise Mayer, and today we're talking about teen relationships, love, and the teen brain with Dr. Crystal Collier. This is a topic that brings up a lot of questions for parents, teen relationships and dating. Whether your child is just starting to notice crushes or already navigating real relationships, it can be hard to know how involved to be, what boundaries matter most, and how to have these conversations without creating distance. This episode isn't about fear or rigid rules. It's about understanding what teens need developmentally, what's influencing them today, and how parents can stay connected and influential, even when dating enters the picture. So I'm joined today by Dr. Crystal Collier, a licensed therapist and national expert in adolescent development and prevention science. She brings a calm, practical, and research-backed perspective that every parent needs right now. So welcome, Dr. Collier. How are you?
I'm great, Denise. I'm so honored to be here. This is my favorite topic to talk about is adolescence and helping them get through that period of time, hopefully as unscathed as possible. So thank you for having me.
Well, we're tickled to death to have you. And I'm going to share with the audience a little more background about our esteemed guest.
Oh, thank you.
So Dr. Collier, PhD, LPCS, is a nationally recognized therapist, researcher, and educator whose innovative, brain-based prevention work has earned multiple state and national awards. She is the creator of the Know Your Neuro Prevention and Skills Building Program, a comprehensive neurodevelopmental model that teaches youth, parents, and educators about the brain and high-risk behaviors. Dr. Collier is the author of the Neuro Whereabouts Guide, Your Moves Matter, and Know Your Neuro Adventures of a Growing Brain, which translates prevention science into practical tools for children, teens, parents, and clinicians. And I'm going to hold up that book to start with. It's amazing. So welcome, Crystal. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, so happy to have you. This book is like a Bible for parents. Everybody should have a copy. It's kind of like the Dr. Spock or whatever back in the day of how to handle your child.
Right. Instead of how to raise, what was it? How to raise a baby or an infant?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like
I
that.
can't remember,
like how to raise a teenager, right?
Right,
Into
exactly.
a healthy, functioning young adult. Exactly.
Absolutely. So I'm not really sure how to just jump right in here, but with all the pressures that are going on with teens today, they still have their hormones and they still have, their attractions and whatever. So what do why do they even matter so much to parents right now? What should parents realize about those relationships?
So there are phases that kids should go through as they start to date. And so in the Neuro Whereabouts Guide, which is the parent guide, I have some information about teen dating. So there's a middle school chapter and a high school chapter that parents are going to find a lot of this information in. And what's important to remember is the stages of dating. So when kids start getting to about 14, 15, 16, even prior to that, in middle school, we want to foster healthy relationships. So we want to chaperone group activities. I want you guys to think about what's happening in the adolescent brain starting at around 10, 11, 12. Middle school is a period of time when peer relationships are way more important and interesting than any other relationship. Now, that doesn't mean that parent relationships or caregiver relationships are not important, because a lot of times we think that is so not true. But because of an adolescent's brain development, peer relationships become extremely important as their brain grows into identity development and, of course, into puberty. So, of course, they're going to be really, really, really important, but kids don't have a fully formed frontal lobe, the part that does decision making and good judgment and impulse control. So we want to make sure that we give them lots of opportunities to socialize with really curated and supervised events.
That makes total sense. Just to let them loose on their own, 2 by 2, it doesn't make any sense to me. There's way too much that goes on with that.
No.
So what concerns do you hear most often from parents right now about dating and relationships? What things come up?
Well, I think COVID and technology has so changed the landscape of human relationships, period. And so, the stage that we went through maybe is talking on the phone for hours. I remember my phone was pulled all the way into, I had that yellow banana phone, and the cord was so long and I would stretch it as far as I could get it so that I could get my door closed. And so today, that's not really a stage anymore. But when kids say, oh, we're talking, what that means is really they're texting. And so texting starts pretty young sometimes. I think it's always important to make sure that when parents get a phone for their kids in middle school, that it is a basic phone, that it is not connected to the internet. That is going to be a big mistake that parents make. We want to get them a basic phone so that they can text their friends. And then you get to decide which friends get to go on that phone and help them make really good decisions regarding who they start texting. So texting is really the beginning phases of many dating kind of behaviors. Kids are just waiting longer to date than ever before, but the kind of pro of that is that they are not necessarily engaging in as much risky dating or sexual behavior. But the con is that they are a little bit less mature when they start to date and get to have in-person events. And so they're making more impulsive decisions. And I think this scares parents as well. Not to mention, what other kids and how other kids have been raised. A lot of times parents are like, oh my gosh, can I approve or disapprove of who my son or daughter dates? And I think the answer to that is absolutely yes, but let's do it together, right? Let's ease kids into social relationships. And when they're choosing somebody who may not be the best influence, to be able to help talk to them about that and ask them lots of open-ended questions. Like, I really know that you love this person, but are they really a great social influence? How were they raised? What are their rules? I think another thing that parents are so terrified to do is call the other parents. Get to know the other parents. And this is so interesting because in other countries, especially in European countries, this is a standard practice. If my child is dating your child, we get on the phone, we talk, we go out to coffee, we get to know each other so that our kids are really well supervised when they're together. We chaperone and scaffold their skills building.
It's kind of like co-parenting with two different families, that you're not leaving them alone in the basement for, 4 or 5 hours over at this house or this house. There's somebody. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I can only imagine. And there's so many things I know. When our one granddaughter was dating somebody when she was in high school, and I think she brought him over for dinner or whatever, we were all like, this is not a healthy relationship. I mean, you could tell. And she eventually ended that. But that's a hard thing. You don't want to be too pushy about it, like you said. And this situation, he didn't even have any parents, I don't think, but it was not a good thing. And we just weren't, wasn't me, her parents, of course, he had to step in and talk about it. And you're right. I mean, it's a lot of just sitting down with them and say, okay, what do you think about this? What are some red flags? So what would you say are some red flags in a relationship?
Red flags in relationships for young people today may include technology. So
Mm.
if somebody is taking another person's phone and saying, "Who are you talking to? You can't talk to them," or
Mm.
checking up on text message conversations, those are really big red flags. Other red flags is that they use substances and introduce somebody else. I have a lot of clients who say, "Well, my boyfriend smokes, but I don't."
Mm.
There's always a red flag there, right? Because peer influence is so much more powerful when we're younger. Maybe you say no 1,000 times, but then on the 1,001 time, there's an old saying that if you go to a barbershop enough times, you will eventually get a haircut. Right. Another red flag, though, too, is if the person that your child is dating, if their parents use substances or allow their child to use substances, we definitely want to be on the same page. And that's why getting to know the other parent is really critical. And you can put the onus on your child. You can say, "Hey, our rule is whether you go on a group date that's supervised or whether you want to have someone over or go to someone's house. A, it has to be supervised at all times by an adult. And B, I need to know that adult. So get me that adult's phone number, call them, get them on the phone, and then bring me the phone." Like literally, you don't have to do a lot of work here. Make sure that your child knows that's the rule. And interesting too, if that's the rule, kids make better choices because then they know, "Oh, I got to introduce him to my dad. Oh, mom
Mhm.
has to approve."
Right.
They know that ahead of time, they're going to think about those things, which is what we want kids to do.
Right. Well, you mentioned, about being careful or mentioned about sex and, the values. So how can parents really talk to the kids about sex, the values, the self-respect, without shaming them or lectures? That's always so tricky.
Oh, it's so tricky. So here's one of the first things I'll say is a lot of times kids will say, "Oh, la la la, I don't want to talk about that." This is what I coach parents to say back is, "You know what? I get it. I validate you. This is cringy. But in our family, we talk. We talk about everything.
Mhm.
That's just our rule. That's what we do. We talk, we trust, we deal, we feel. So I need you to listen to me for 10 minutes and then I'll ask you a couple open-ended questions, but let's talk about this." So that's the first thing is to talk about it. A lot of times parents will say, "Well, they don't want to." What kid ever does want to talk to their parents about this,
Mhm.
right? We need to make sure that that is not an obstacle. Like we have to talk about it. So to set your expectations as a parent doesn't necessarily mean that your child will follow them, but the chances of them following them double or triple if you actually set the expectation. So my expectation for you is that you find a healthy person to date that I know. You introduce them to me and I get to know their parents, and that you engage in really, really healthy behavior and make sure you understand what consent is. And then the harder conversation. Okay, let's talk about when. When in
Mm.
our family is the appropriate time to engage in sexual relations, whether that be just touching or actually intercourse, whatever that looks like. We need to talk about what we would like for you, and then what do you think about that? And so I think it's really important because a lot of times parents say, "No, you will not have sex until marriage." And that is an absolute healthy value to have. There's nothing wrong with that. But to expect that kids are going to follow that 100% of the time is an unreasonable expectation. And so to be able to meet them where they are, but keep those conversations open. Like, here's our
Mhm.
expectation. What do you think? Being very validating and leaving room for them to disagree with you, but still being able to say, "Well, this is our expectation and here's the rule." And so as kids get older, they sneak off, they engage in that stuff under the covers. And so I think it's really important to know that those things happen, but that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that a parent should stop talking about them just because, "Oh, well, it's going to happen anyway. I can't have any effect on them." That is so a myth.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think the other thing that I've noticed out here is we've had some young people so unfortunately take their own lives. And there's been a couple of them that have been post relationship breakups.
Yes.
And, you know, what would you say to parents about how important this is and the support that the kids need when that's happening?
Well, it's critical, but a lot of times we don't know to talk about this before. And
Mm-hmm.
so in the parent guide, in the middle school chapter and in the high school chapter, there are sections about dating and what to talk to kids about. Now, in the new book, which is for teens, it's called Your Moves Matter, and it was written by young people. 19 college age and high school students helped me write all the chapters that are in the parent guide, but from a teen voice. So they got to put their spin on it and put the latest research in it. And so there's an entire chapter on healthy dating and an entire chapter on healthy sexual behavior, what that looks like for in the teen guide. And so a whole chapter on that. But we need to be able to teach kids about dating violence. We need to teach them about breakup violence because 1 in every 3 teenagers is a victim of dating violence. 33% chance. So please, parents, don't think, oh, not my kid.
Right.
We got
I
to be able
always
to
say
say,
that.
okay, exactly. And in the parent guide and the teen guide, the warning signs are there. So you can literally open up the chapter or just give your child the Your Moves Matter book. So and say, hey, like let's go to the dating chapter. What are the warning signs? Do you see any of this? Which is kind of a really cool point of reference too, because then if your child is dating somebody that you've got warning signs, then you can say, hey, in the book it says these are warning signs. What do you think? It's a really good segue into having a discussion about that with some neuroscience on your side, right? Now, it's not just cringy mom and dad talking about this. It's wait, hold on. The science says that this happens. And it's not just boys who perpetrate it. There are a lot of girls who do too, and that number is rising. But what you mentioned earlier is something called breakup violence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really the perfect storm because if you've got, let's say, a 16-year-old teenager, they have 45% of their frontal lobe that's developed. That means they only have 45% of their impulse control. So if they get angry, if they get hurt, if they feel rejected, that impulse control is going to go down, 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 down. And you may have an extremely reactive kiddo that engages in very immature behavior or even violent behavior that is actually not typically represented of who they are when they're
Right.
not hurt and rejected.
Right.
So many children out there have actually been murdered, hurt during breakup violence situations. Now, it's a small percentage, but that small percentage is enough to talk to kids about that. And one of the ways
Absolutely.
you can ward against it is if there is a breakup, you never want to let a child go to the other person's house to collect belongings alone. You never, right? If it's going to be a breakup that could be potentially violent, you want to always be with that child and say, I forbid you going around that person all by yourself because I want you to be safe.
That makes total sense. And, you know, the mental health part of this, you know, just like you said, they're seeking connection and now that connection has been broken. And, you know, now the whole school knows that they've broken up after they've been together for 3 years or 2 years or whatever.
Right.
Those are all parts of this picture that make it so seem like high school, as we all know, adults, high school's traumatic, but it does go in the past, and then you still might talk about it, but it's not the rest of your life.
Right.
But that I think for a parent to say to a kid that's going through this, oh, you'll get over it, more fish in the sea, all those silly things that people have said, I think do nothing but harm.
A lot of harm. I've actually worked especially with boys. Sometimes the first breakup can be traumatic. absolutely devistating. And so to minimize it in that kind of a way, like toughen up, it's, lots of fish in the sea. I think that it's really teaching, especially boys, that they can't be vulnerable. They can't have emotions, right? They can't talk about feeling rejected, or I'm going to get this stigmatized, hyper masculine idea coming back at me. This is a tough time. The first breakup, and I mean, I still remember mine, and how painful it was. Sometimes we can pine over that person for a lifetime afterward. So it's really important not to minimize it, and to make sure that kids are well supported. So in the book, I talk about a breakup ritual that we have. So we want to make sure that the whole world stops, that we watch a sad movie, or we talk about it, or we bake some cookies and get together with our kiddos. But also remember, you may have to do that a few times, because they may break up, get back together, break up, get back together quite a few times until they finally learn and feel enough self-esteem and boundaries to set limits for themselves. So whenever they're making a move in the right direction, we want to praise it, reward it. And when they relapse into some maybe old behavior, we just want to talk about it and reflect it to them.
And that open conversation on all of these things is just critical. And I say that all the time. I mean, they might be awkward conversations sometimes, but they're critical, and they don't all, and as I always say, it's not sit down at the dining room table and have a long talk. It's talk all the time.
Exactly.
Little here, little there.
Little there. Yep.
Yes.
Little popcorn conversations all over. Yes.
Yeah. And a lot of times when you're driving, and a lot of times when you're at McDonald's or whatever, it does happen.
Shoulder to shoulder conversations, right?
Shoulder
Where you're
to
not
shoulder.
directly staring, especially for boys. That's how boys relate more, is shoulder to shoulder and activity wise.
And I think parents sometimes forget too that just because they're talking and the teen is not talking so much doesn't mean they're not hearing them.
Exactly.
They are hearing them.
Oh, they're so hearing it. Yes.
They're so hearing them.
Yes. A lot of times when kids say things like, I don't know, parents take that as a rejection, as a real answer, and then they stop talking. The best thing to say when a teenager says, I don't know, is to say, okay, well, tell me when you figure it out. Right? It's like, tell me when you figure it out. Now, they may never come back and say, oh, I figured it out. But what you've done is you kind of put an earworm, like, what an earworm is when you hear a song over and over and over. And when you ask a kid a question like that, open-ended question, their brain reviews it over and over and over and over again. Like, oh, I got to figure that out. Right. And so never take, I don't know, as an answer, but don't get upset. Right. Their brain just isn't capable of thinking of an answer in that moment, or they really, really don't know. But keep talking about it, right? And 5-minute conversations, like, what do you think about this? How do you feel about that? A little worried about that. Here's my expectation that you protect your brain and your body. Right. Done. In a few days, the same conversation can happen, but keep it short. Do not lecture.
Yeah. The lecture part is what the turnoff is, I think, always.
Always.
Unfortunately.
So following the 90-10 rule can be very helpful, which is the kid talks 90% of the time. Parent talks 10. It's so hard to get to that percentage.
It is.
It is, because you want to lecture, you want to keep safe. You've already predicted all the negative things that can happen. Their brain is not capable of predicting all those things yet. So you want to say, well, this will happen and that'll happen, instead of what might happen. What are the pros and cons?
Right.
You want their brain to start thinking in Socratic questions and not shutting off their ears when you're lecturing.
Right. And I think parents obviously need to be authentic, obviously. But I think sometimes sharing their own personal stories too much is not very helpful. Would you say?
Well, I'll tell you what the literature says too, because when I was researching, especially the parent guide, I wanted to know. So a lot of times parents will say, well, I drank or I smoked weed, but can't I just say that to my kids, or I had sex here, or they're like, I'm like, oh, so here's what the literature says. Some research has been done on this. When you tell your child that you engaged in something too young or too early, or something that was illegal, and you talk about it as if it were fun, it actually glamorizes the behavior and they are more likely to engage in that behavior. But if you talk about it and admit it, and then immediately talk about what the negative consequences are, they're actually less likely to engage in it. So if you say, yeah, I drank when I was 15, I went to a party and I got really, really drunk, and my dad was so disappointed, and I had such a terrible hangover, I didn't understand why people did it. Instead of, yeah, I drank when I was 15, it was fun. I mean, I shouldn't have done it. There's a big difference between those two deliveries.
Right. Big difference. And a big difference in the perception that the teen would have about that. Yeah.
I think, let me just add one more of that is really about our topic. You know, like when somebody says, I engaged in I engaged in sex when I was 15, 16, let's say, which is about the average for about 45% of teens today. You could let kids know, you know, maybe I did it earlier, or I engaged in it when I really didn't want to yet, or I was really excited, but because I was so young, these are some of the negative things that happened. You know, the person ended up breaking up with me right after, or they took a picture of me in a weird picture. You know, you can share what happened. If it was a poor choice, immediately talk about the negative consequences, and then open-ended question, what might happen if you said yes to this?
Right. And then with the social media and the availability of kids being able to request and then send sexting, as they call it, pictures that are inappropriate, and that the poor other person on the other end, after they have given it, boys or girls, and that they feel like, you know, they're only going to be seen by that person, we know is ridiculous. And so how should parents talk to their kids about that?
So very concretely, no nudes, no sexting. Now, here is the response that you might get. I had a client, this was before COVID. She said to me, that's just how teenagers communicate today. We sext. That's what we do. You can't take that away from us. So it was very interesting because that was about probably 2-3 years before my book was being published. But her comment sent me diving into the scientific literature. So I've got this in both of the books, that when kids engage in sexting behavior, that's just sending sexty texts to each other, or sending nudes or naked pictures to each other, that the negative social and interpersonal consequences are great, statistically significant. And so to be able to say to kids, you may get curious, you may want to, you may even think it's going to be that one person, and I validate that you trust your partner, but in our family, we don't do that. We treat each other and ourselves with kindness and respect, and we just don't do that. Now, tell me why you want to do that. Like, that's the conversation to have. It's like a validation sandwich, right? You say, I get it. I hear you. I understand. The answer is no, we don't do that in our family. But wow, tell me more about this. Like, is this what you think everybody does? And what are you hearing happening? That way, you can be very validating, because of course they're a teenager and they're interested and curious and they want to. We don't want to take that away from them, but they can't see the long-term, even the short-term consequences of some of those choices.
And the psychological implications of that, where you might have, and I'm just picking a girl, but I'm just saying where a young man would request that of a girl, and you know, she's unsure of the relationship, she might think that that's going to shore things up. That's going to really make him think she is the one. And I think that's the sad part, because we know that's not true. And then there's all those mental health implications from it. Depression, anxiety. Yep. That's the big worry for me. And
exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And then that brings me to another question that is in the news all over, are these AI relationships. You know, when kids don't feel like they can connect to somebody that's real, but they think they could pour their souls out to a chat GBT or whatever. Talk about that a little bit. I think that's frightening.
It's frightening to me. And okay, Let me just share with you. I had a teenager tell me a couple years ago now. I remember what he said. He said, Doc, I've got Pornhub and DoorDash. I never need to leave my room. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's terrifying. And I was treating him for depression and anxiety. And what I know is that when we stay locked up in our room and we don't go out and socialize and work on social anxiety, then we have more of it and we have less skills, which then, of course, leads to more social anxiety and less skills. And so I've had probably 6 or 7 clients in the past year who have acquired a chat GPT or an AI friend. And what we've also heard in the news is they run on sycophantic algorithms, meaning they tell you exactly what you want to hear. And so that's not always the correct information. And it's not always the healthiest boundary to help someone set. And so many of these chatbot friends will speak to your child in sexual ways. They will have conversations that you would not want them to have with a real life human. And you also don't want them to get therapeutic advice from an AI friend. But what is terrifying about that is the truth of the motivation. So the impetus for this is because real life friendships are hard. They are never perfect. You have to cultivate them. You have to maintain them. You have to feel rejected at times. You have to learn how to communicate in a way that doesn't make you weird or awkward. Like those are all things we learn how to do during adolescence. But what if we don't do them? Then what happens? We don't grow the long networks of neurons in our brain for those skills. And then once we hit 25 and that brain development, the plasticity, the dendrite growth starts to have peaked and now it's going downhill, now what do? So that's what I'm seeing is that more and more of our young people have very immature ideas of relationships and have poorer communication skills, and their expectation is that that they want things in life to be easy. And that's one of the things. So there are 2 really big dangers, right, of having an AI friend is that it creates this echo chamber that whatever you think and feel gets echoed right back at you. And if you don't have a full frontal lobe that's developed, then you're going to have some very concrete ideas echoed back to you. But the other idea is that delaying gratification is bad. And so kids are thinking, well, I want it and I want it now. I want a friendship and I want it now. I want it instant. I want instant company. I'm working with a 13-year-old who gets so disappointed when his one friend doesn't have the time to go socialize with him. So we're working on how do you find new friends? And he's like, yeah, but I want them now and I want them to do this today. And they're not making plans ahead in the future. They're just calling in the morning and saying, let's go hang out. And if the kid already had other plans, they feel so hurt and rejected. When, wait a second, this is not like we have to plan these things out. We have to delay gratification. But our technologically advanced world is creating this environment where kids think they can have whatever they want right now delivered to their house.
Right. And you brought up a point about, I think you did anyway, about the pornography part of it with the young man there that was in his room and staying there.
Yeah.
That is, I talked to one of the middle school principals, and this was several years ago when I was so focused on substance misuse. And he said, well, the thing you need to really be addressing too is pornography. This was in the middle school, which is 7th and 8th out here. And I was so flabbergasted at that. But since I hear more and more about that, and then the effect that that has. So if you could just even address that for, a couple of minutes.
Can I address it? Okay. So in the parent guide in the middle school and high school, there's information on it. In that book, there is a really good chart, a graphic that describes about 75 years of literature on the effects of pornography on brain development, on social development, intimacy development. Now, in the Your Moves Matter, the teen guide, I had an intern who wanted to take that whole chapter on. She did such a great job. She put the history of it, the effects of it. She even did a little mock survey with some friends of hers to see, okay, what's happening? Are people using it? Why are they using it? And, how is it affecting them? It was a really beautiful chapter. It's so critical to understand the negative effects of seeing it. But the average age is like 8, 9, 10 years old. And then the average search is 9, 10, 11 years old. So they see it and then they start searching for it. And pornography companies will tag really innocent names of children's characters with pornography sites, so that if you keep scrolling down on a search for Little Mermaid, you will eventually find a pornography site that has that tag name attached to it, which is really dirty and
it's
really
so
sick and underhanded. But just like drug companies, they want you to be exposed so you get addicted quicker, so you'll buy their products. But these are teaching kids the wrong ideas about sex. I've had so many young girls say, am I supposed to like being choked? My boyfriend slapped me during sex and he told me that I should like that because he saw it on porn and the girls there look like they like it. I had a young man who was in a fraternity choke his girlfriend, kind of girlfriend, kind of a hookup situation, right? And got kicked out of his fraternity because she lodged a complaint against him. And he's like, wait, he never really had a good father figure present in his life. He learned all about sex through porn. And so what he thought was what women really wanted. It's what he saw. About 80% of pornography online is filled with violence towards women. And these are not women necessarily who set boundaries about that or say, wait, I didn't consent to this. Like, that's not what they're seeing. They're seeing a lot of pictures. So
most of that's not reality, right? I mean, they're actors and
or they may not be actors, but they're people who have grown up looking at the same thing and they're playing that out because they think that's what is pleasurable to them. And we don't care really what is or isn't, but we want to make sure that kids understand the effect of looking at it, no matter what it is, has a lot of negative effects on their body, their physiological response, as well as their intimacy skills. So when I have a client who has been looking at pornography young, I ask them, what have you learned about sex? Let's talk about what to unlearn about that and what it does to intimacy. And I've had a lot of clients, young as well as older, who've become very desensitized physiologically. I think it was in 2018 when the amount of erectile dysfunctions between the group 18 to 25 surpassed that amount of diagnoses in people 65 and older.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
So what's happening? What's happening is that young people are introduced to sex and masturbation via a screen, whether that's their phone or their laptop or whatever that is. And then the screen gets paired with the sexual response. So now when a young person has the encounter with a real life person, the screen is not there. So the sexual response is not there either. That is just classical conditioning, right? It's just literally conditioning, and it's having a really negative effect. And a lot of young people don't understand that intimacy can take time, a long time. But when young people are watching pornography, it can be minutes, and there's not a long there's not a lot of activity. There's not intimacy. There's not kissing or touching or talking, all the things that we would want young people to learn how to do as they're creating healthy sexual identities. So in the chapter on sex in Your Moves Matter, the intern that took that topic, she really wanted to have a checklist that talked about, okay, what is a sexual identity? And what should it be? What do you want it to be? What does a healthy one look like? And I love that concept because there's not a lot of educators out there who teach that or facilitate the learning of that with kids.
Yeah. And I mean, the mental intimacy, is every bit as big, if not bigger, than the physical, and without that, you get into your 30s or your 40s or whatever. And, now you've got an issue with your partner, and it all stems back to this. It's so heartbreaking, really.
Very, very much so. So in both books, I have the healthy relationship continuum graph, and it shows how dopamine and oxytocin go up at different times in a relationship. So there's lots of brain chemicals that are included in intimacy, but dopamine and oxytocin are really the two main ones. Dopamine's job is to bring us together for the purpose of procreating so that our species survives another generation.
Right.
So it's going to go up really quickly during the first few months of sexual attraction. But oxytocin, which is that wonderful chemical that develops and grows with healthy intimacy and trust and authenticity and genuineness. Now, what's really so important for kids and adults to remember is that when we first are sexually attracted to somebody, dopamine spikes and oxytocin does a little bit. So oxytocin makes us think, oh, this is my person. And then, of course, when kids who don't have a fully formed frontal lobe and are very sensitive to dopamine, when they get both of those, they're like, yeah, and they jump right in.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of adults do too. And then as the dopamine starts to wane after 6-9 months, they're like, wait, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. It did its job. And now we have to have little teeny tiny spikes over the years to come by doing date night and creating novel situations and working on that. That's normal. A lot of people think it's abnormal when the dopamine goes down. No. What's not normal is when the oxytocin plummets. That person is not your person. And then we're like, wait, you were my person. What happened? Hold on. You didn't really get to know them. It takes about 9 months to 18 months to really get to know someone, and you have to have seen them at their worst at least twice. And then oxytocin actually continues to rise, at some point surpassing dopamine. That creates a healthy intimacy, friendship, companionship. And sometimes the sex decreases throughout the lifetime of the human relationship. And that's not abnormal. But what is unfortunate is when kids think it is, and they don't understand what oxytocin does. So I like having that chart there.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that we're still going to wait. Like many people don't. But it's something parents can do is to show that chart and say, wait, having sex within the first 6 to 9 months of a relationship is actually really dangerous because you don't even really know that person yet, but you may trick yourself into thinking you do. So having that conversation doesn't mean that kids are going to like wait 6 to 9 months necessarily, but they may wait a little bit more time and understand what they can do to really get to know someone.
And that's so important. So what do you think about teens today? Everybody's so down on, they're on their phones 24, so are the parents, on their phones 24/7. They're never going to end up to be much because they're not really applying themselves. I've heard it all. And I always say, that's just not true. That's not true. I've got 6 grandchildren. I think they're amazing. So, just you have to, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think of the future?
I mean, there have even been books written, Attack of the Teenage Brain. And I don't like to characterize kids like that because, it's not it's a pathological thing that kids go through. This is a normal thing that kids go through. I mean, here's what I think about. I think about, when kids are in elementary school, they're very egocentric. Like the world revolves around them and they don't know any different, right? We don't fault them for that. But once kids move into middle school and puberty starts setting in, they come into what's called adolescent egocentrism. They start to think everybody's looking at them. It's a phenomenon called imaginary audience. And then they also have what we call a personal fable, where they think nothing bad's going to happen to them because they haven't been through anything bad yet. And during that time, kids become so hyper focused on peers because their job is to create their identity and to create a sexual identity and a presence socially. So of course they would go through that. A lot of parents either become kind of narcissistically wounded when their kids push away, or they get rigid and inflexible when kids start seeking out outside relationships more than family relationships. But to remember that that is a normal stage of development. They need to push away. They get more aggressive and argumentative because that's what their brains need to do to disconnect from us and move into individuation, which is what we want them to do. So they will eventually become fully self-supporting adults and leave our house without boomeramming back, right? Yeah.
With their kids.
Exactly. So if parents start to learn the neuro whereabouts, like, okay, all that cuddling and hugging, that's kind of maybe gone. And they may not act as if they care about what I think. They still care, but they may not act that way. They may be snarky and argumentative. These are all really good signs of healthy brain development, not fun to be around. So I always teach parents, RRF. You can set an expectation that your children are respectful, responsible, and fun to be with. And you can say, when you can be respectful, we will resume this conversation. That was not respectful. You earned a consequence, and something, goes away. Being able to shape a teenager's behavior with rewards and consequences, and learning how to be a trainer, not a director, of their frontal lobe skills is the position that I coach parents to take.
And that makes so much sense to me. So I mean, we've always talked about the books, and that'll all be in the podcast notes where they can get those. But do you have a website, or where can some of the parents reach out?
Yes. So
I thought so.
Sure. I have a free prevention program that teaches the neurodevelopmental effects of risky behavior. So there's many schools that are using this nationally, as well as in the UK. I'm about to load 6 different languages onto it for all the videos. There are videos about all these different high-risk topics, but there are also videos on how to build skills from kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade. So I recommend that when parents use this, they look at the video first of what they want to teach their kid. And then if they feel like parent approved, let's watch it with the kid. They're like 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 8 minutes, depending upon the age group. Use those 6 times a year. Have 6 conversations per year about different risky behavior and executive functioning skills. So you don't want to just prevent high-risk behavior. You want to grow brain skills. And that's what this program does. So all the books are also listed there and what they can use, but the program is free. It's my nonprofit. It is my passion project. I constantly put new videos on it, new languages, and different things for parents and schools to use. So please reach out that way.
Well, I'll make sure that's all in the podcast notes. Yay. And yes, and I remember seeing you on Operation Parent, and was so impressed with that, and got the first book. Now I'm going to get the second book. I'm going to get that for my grandkids.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I can't thank you enough. I mean, your expertise and reassurances are invaluable, because so much of what you said is just typical teen behavior. And, parents, I think, get like mood swings and stuff, get them all crazy. Like, now my kid's doing this or that. Probably not. I mean, the majority aren't. The problem is we have to address the ones that are. That's what a lot of my work is, and trying to bring these podcasts out to parents, that so the ones that really need it because they're struggling so much can get some help. So, but your expertise is amazing and invaluable, and I'll make sure that those notes are in the podcast, and I can't thank you enough. So your new teen guide, though, Your Moves Matter, I think is a wonderful gift for grandparents to get for their teenagers, for their grandchildren.
Absolutely.
I do. I mean, you can't think what to buy them to begin with. Christmas just got past us and now we start a slew of birthdays, and it makes so much sense that they would have a resource to go and get. So
Exactly,
anyway,
from a youth voice. So
from a youth
I love
voice.
that. Yeah, it's not
That's
this like old
incredible.
lady saying all this neuroscience stuff. It's literally teenagers who did the research and actually said, here's what the state of it is. So I also
Amazing.
love Operation Parent. We're putting a new webinar together called The
Oh, good.
State of Youth today. And we're
Oh.
going to talk more about all the different risky behavior, hear from teen voices so they can really help parents understand what the landscape looks out there. And Denise, thank you for having me. It's such an honor.
I just loved having you, and I love Operation Parent, and I'm on their list, so I'll be sure to get that one, and I will definitely be listening because they're amazing. And I mean, there's so many good people out there trying to help parents to help their kids, and it's nice when we can connect. So.
Yep.
So as we wrap up, I hope this conversation left you feeling more confident and less overwhelmed. Teen dating doesn't require perfect parenting. What matters most is connection, showing up, listening, and creating space for ongoing conversations. When parents stay calm, curious, and engaged, we remain one of the strongest influences in our kids' lives. Thank you to our listeners for joining us for this important discussion. If this episode was helpful, please share it with any parent that you know that might need it. There's so many out there that do. Yeah. And you'll find Dr. Collier's resources linked in the show notes. So you can see these podcasts on YouTube and Apple Podcasts, social media, including Facebook, Instagram, and X and LinkedIn. You can also access them on our website, which is www.stepupanderson.org, and listen on Spotify. Please share and most importantly, subscribe and follow us so that we can reach more parents. A special thank you for being part of the Step Up to Save Our Children community. Together we can raise awareness, spark change, and support the next generation. Until next time, thank you.